welcome back to another edition of Bailey Price Media Live.
Bailey Price Media, I like it.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Thursday. Welcome to another edition of Bailey Price Media Live. We got lots to talk about today. Today we have the honor of having Super Bowl champion quarterback Shaun joining the show. Today we're going to discuss Steve Sarkisian canceling Texas spring game. It's a big development, and we're going to discuss the real reason why that is. This is the new NIL era of college football. We're also going to discuss the NFL increasing the salary cap by over $20 million, how this affects free agency. We're going to discuss DeSean Jackson, who's now the head coach at Delaware State, HBCU. He brought in Clinton Portis, former NFL running back, as his running backs coach. So we're going to discuss that. Texas Tech and the transfer portal making noise. We're going to discuss that. And Carson Beck got into a little situation where him and the Cavender twin got their cars stolen. So we're going to discuss that as well. But, man, if you're watching, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and become a member of the Bailey Price Media Army. I appreciate you watching. We got a great one in store for today. Let's waste no further time on bringing our guest, Super Bowl champion, Tulane alum, and legend, Shaun King. Shaun, how you doing, brother? Thank you for joining. Happy Thursday.
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We both got the red on today.
Garage, I just want to check in the garage, make sure the whip's still out there.
Yeah. Yeah, Carson Beck. Let's dive in right into that. So, waste no further time. Carson Beck and his girlfriend Hannah Cavender, both student athletes at the University of Miami, had 3 vehicles stolen overnight from them. As far as I know, Beck's Lamborghini and Mercedes are still missing, while Cavender's SUV was found. Shaun, let me just get your thoughts on this situation before we dive into Carson Beck in Miami. What are your thoughts on this?
Do they live together?
I would guess so. I would take a guess so. It's an odd situation to hit the headlines today. Interesting. Now,
and three whips stolen, not just one.
Yeah, I guess he has 2 different cars or something. This is the NIL era. He got a Lamborghini and a Mercedes.
I guess that's why you have insurance, man. Let that shit go. That's like some cartel type action, though, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me ask you, Shaun. Let's talk more in bigger picture here. Carson Beck obviously transferred to Miami from Georgia this offseason, and I thought that was an interesting development. Now Miami brings in another 1-year guy as their quarterback. What are your thoughts on Carson Beck transferring to Miami, and how may he impact the team? Do you think this is a good fit, a bad fit? What are your thoughts?
Well, Bailey, I think it depends on what Carson Beck they get. People forget this. Coming into this college football season, Carson Beck was the projected number 1 pick in the draft. And he played such an uneven season that he played himself out of that position. And, because of his measurables, I'm sure he probably could have processed, himself into the first round of the draft, but he didn't have a really good year at Georgia. I don't think there's anybody at Georgia that's upset that he's gone. So I think it's just going to depend on, can he regain the form that made him the prohibitive number 1 pick before the season. We'll see.
Absolutely. And let me ask you, Miami in the ACC, what's their ceiling with Carson Beck? Are you optimistic going into next season with that and Carson Beck leading that school, or is there cause for concern? What are your thoughts?
So here's what's interesting. Last year was a down year for the ACC football league. Everybody can agree. Clemson wasn't the dominant team it's been. Florida State was terrible. The rest of the schools that sometimes pop up, Louisville and the such, were just average. ACC title game was Clemson versus SMU. SMU's first year in the conference. Right. Miami has 10 guys that got invited to the NFL Scouting Combine. Yeah. They have the potential number 1 pick in the draft in Ken Ward, and they couldn't get it done with all of that talent in a down year in the conference. So I feel like, if they were going to win it, last year was the year to win it. I mean, the best version of Carson Beck probably isn't as explosive as Cam Ward because Cam can just do more. So, you lose Restrepo, you lose a lot of, again, 10 guys invited to the NFL Scout Combine, most in the ACC, and I think 6th or 7th most of any school. So I don't know. I don't know what the expectations should be there. I'd be interested in what Steve Kim has to say. But I said that to say it's one of the reasons that I'm kind of like, I wish Cam Ward had me in his circle of trust.
Right. Yeah.
Like I just say with these young, like everybody's going to, regret not drafting you. I mean, you just had the most talented team in a down year in the ACC, and you played good, but you were uneven at times, but y'all couldn't get to the ACC title game.
Yeah, that is true.
Like you have to get drafted to a team that has inferior talent to almost everybody they're going to play, most likely, if you go where you think you're going to go. So I don't know. To answer your question, I'm not sure.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. And Cam Ward is going to go to a team with inferior talent. We'll see where he ends up. He just put out a statement, or had something to say the other day about teams saying, if you don't want me, blah, 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 just put it out. I was like, damn, Cam. We talked about that on JB's show. Let me ask you, what are your thoughts on Mario Cristobal in Miami? Underperformed last year at all? Or, I mean, you had all the pieces and just couldn't put it together. What are your thoughts on Mario Cristobal?
I'm not going to say he's a bad coach, but I'm not going to say he's a coach where my expectation would be championships. He's really good at evaluating talent and collecting talent. He kind of struggles, in my opinion, with game management and figuring out how to get the guys motivated every week to play their best. Like Miami won games this year because they were the most talented, not because they were well coached.
All right, absolutely. It's a great point. And let me ask you, if Miami has a down year, what's next for that? Last year they fired their DC, and they bring in a new guy. And now, if they have a down year with Carson Beck, hopefully with new talent to surround Carson Beck, what does that mean for Cristobal? Is he going to be on the hot seat? Are people in Miami going to be looking to run him out? Billy Napier is still there. Same with Norvell. I don't know what's next for Cristobal if they have a down year.
DeSean Jackson will be the head coach at Florida State of Miami next year if one of them has a bad year.
Wow. You really think so?
Yeah.
You don't think there's a shot Prime goes to the NFL? You think he comes back to Florida?
Yeah, he come back to Florida.
Absolutely, man.
I don't think there's an owner and a GM that will give DeSean the power that he wants and deserves at the National Football League level.
Yeah, that's a fair point. He definitely wants full autonomy. No way Jerry Jones was ever going to give him that. So that whole news to the Cowboys, I was like, he has autonomy with Rick George in Colorado. I don't think Jerry Jones would ever do that. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And listen, Boulder's getting more boring by the day. No offense to McChesney and my guys, but I'm telling you. Now that I'm telling you, once Shiloh and Shedeur start coming around, I'm just gonna tell you, Boulder gonna start looking like Boulder. No offense to the state of Colorado. I heard Boulder's a great place to visit, but
no, I hear where you're coming from, Shaun. Well, since we're on the topic, let's talk a little Boulder and Colorado. I gotta ask you, since you're the quarterback whisperer, you're gonna give a better insight to this than probably anybody on YouTube. So. Colorado, Shedeur Sanders and Kaidon Salter, new quarterback transfer from Liberty. We've seen working out at Colorado. Now, Shaun, I got to ask you, Kaidon Salter threw for over 5,000 yards, and I believe 50 touchdowns at Liberty, rushed for over 2,000 yards. Different type of player than Shedeur. I think more athletic, more dynamic, able to use his feet a little bit more, but I think can still spin it. What are your thoughts on Kaidon Salter at Colorado, and what's the ceiling for CU next year with him at the helm?
If you look at him at Liberty 2 years ago, he was really good, outstanding. I think he might have been Conference Player of the Year. They lost a lot off that team. Didn't play as well last year, but I think Colorado's in a good spot because they got the vet that's talented in Salter, but they also got the highly sought-after young kid in Juju Lewis. So I think between the two, they'll be okay. I just wonder what's around them.
Right, yeah.
I wonder what's around them. Like, you got to think, like, Colorado, could potentially have 2 top 10 picks in this draft. I mean, we know Travis is going. Most likely, Shedeur will be a top 10 pick. Probably going to have 3, 4 other guys drafted. Did they have the depth to not take a step back when that kind of talent leaves? We'll find out.
Yeah, well, that is a big question. We'll find out. I'd hope that Colorado adds a run game this season, more of a run game. They brought in Andre Gerard and a couple other guys to go with George Hageman and Gunnar White as their offensive line coach. He's got 3 of them. Let's hope they can figure it out. They got, all freshmen, all American, Jordan Seaton, Cash Cleveland. They're recognized for playing as true freshmen. Jordan Seaton, I think, had a hell of a season as a true freshman left tackle, and the way he played. Let's see if that offensive line can develop and give them a run game to go with Salter. Can you talk about kind of Salter's game versus Shedeur Sanders' game? 2 very different players, but I think both are. I mean, obviously Shedeur is a hell of a player. Salter's a hell of a player. Just different. Can you kind of discuss that a little bit?
Salter's a smaller body guy than Shedeur. Shedeur's a little bigger. Salter's a better athlete. He's going to run faster in a straight line. Arm talent-wise, they're about the same. Even production-wise, like when Shedeur came from Jackson State, he did a lot production-wise at Jackson State. Kaidon's coming from Liberty, having done probably more than Shedeur did, because it was on a bigger stage. So I think they're very similar in a lot of ways. Demeanor-wise, I don't know a lot about Kaidon as far as personality and tangibles go, but I do know that he replaced a legend at Liberty and Malik Willis. And they didn't feel like they missed a beat. So he's done this before. For as big as Shedeur is to Colorado, Malik was just as big to Liberty.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he stepped in that situation. I'm sure he'll, if he wins the job, step into this situation and represent himself, fairly well. I just wonder what's around him. BYU's loaded coming back. Arizona State's about to be a powerhouse.
Yes,
so we'll see. We'll see, do they have what it takes to define and try and find a way to that Big 12 title game?
Absolutely. And a team we're about to talk about, Texas Tech, is at least in the transfer portal noise. They're making some noise and pissing people.
Where are they getting all this money from, Bailey?
That's my next question. Is Shaun, Texas Tech apparently has spent the most in the top 5, is spending the most money in the transfer portal, along with Auburn, Michigan, Ole Miss, and Texas. Spokesman from On3 or SEC personal staffer says, in theory, Tech fucked the market up for everybody. Shaun, what's going on? Go ahead.
This didn't work for Texas A&M and Jimbo Fisher. They tried to do this.
Good point.
And it didn't work. But I don't know what's going on with Texas Tech. For context, Texas Tech gave Stanford's women's softball pitcher like $1 million NIL deal to transfer there. So it's not just football. Like they printing. They got a federal money printing facility down there we don't know about.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Shaun, I got sticking on Texas Tech. There's a whole plethora of things we're going to talk about. Their highly coveted general manager James Blanchard ended up turning down Notre Dame to stay at Texas Tech. Do you have any thoughts on this? I just see more and more this offseason Texas Tech making noise, and they retain their general manager, which in the NIL era of college football, I think is huge. You've seen, obviously North Carolina with Bill Belichick. He has Michael Lombardi. Stanford just brought in Andrew Luck, and I had a Stanford offensive lineman on this show 2 days ago talking about that and the impact of that. What are your thoughts on Texas Tech retaining their general manager Blanchard from keeping him from going to Notre Dame?
First of all, Blanchard looks like he just got out. Like he's been doing that prison workout for the last 12 months.
Right.
Maybe he's just not Catholic, baby. I mean, Bailey, maybe he just, as high profile as Notre Dame is in football, as a black man, is that really, what I want to – I know Freeman's doing his thing, and it's a big brand now. Don't get me wrong. It's a big brand. So if you go – but, if Texas Tech, not that Lubbock is a destination spot when you're going on vacation, but
right,
depending on what you like to do, maybe it's more of that in Lubbock than it is, in South Bend. But
absolutely,
I don't know. It probably came down to money, to be honest. And let me say this: why do you want to be on the back of the bus at Notre Dame if you could be on the front of the bus at Texas Tech?
Right.
Notre Dame just played in the Natty. They can't go anywhere but down next year. I mean, anything that doesn't make the national title game is going to be less than what they accomplished this year.
Right.
Whereas if Texas Tech was to win 10 games, man, the way they spend their money, hell, they might have a bigger payroll than the Cowboys, after that.
Right. And chat's just letting us know about Lubbock. Let's talk about.
I've been to Lubbock. Ain't nothing there.
You're right. And I got to ask you, sticking on the money, conversation we had earlier, teams that spent the most money, would you put SMU in that boat last year? Because I know SMU had a ton of money in NIL and whatnot, and it seemed to have worked out for them. They played in their conference championship game. I know they lost to Clemson, but
it was money well spent. SMU was not even a dominant factor in the AAC.
Right.
Like when you look at who won those championships, it was Tulane, Houston, UCF, Cincinnati. It wasn't SMU. And to go into a Power Four conference and make it to the title game, I mean, hell, obviously money well spent.
Money well spent indeed. And sticking on that, Texas Tech's NAL Collective founder, Cody Campbell, sold his oil and natural gas company, Double Eagle, for $4.1 billion. Now, we talked about this earlier, where the money's coming from. Not that this matters now because, college football is transitioning to revenue sharing and whatnot, but Texas NIL Collective founder sold his company for $4 billion. Any thoughts?
I mean, when it says collective founder, I mean, that means he's more than just a money guy. That means like he's invested, in Texas Tech athletics. Because
absolutely,
as being the guy that's the head of the collective, I mean, that's all the sports, if I'm not mistaken, with football, of course, being the number one priority. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, it looks like, he's going to take his wealth and try and turn Texas Tech football into a national power. We'll see if it can happen. I just would like to see, and listen, I never second guess a guy that was able to grow a company to being worth $4.1 billion. Absolutely. It takes $999 million to get to $1 billion. So $4.1 billion is a whole lot of millions.
A lot of money.
I would like to see his business plan. Or is he just doing it for love? Or is there a way that he thinks he'll get a return on his investment based on success and the incoming, proceeds that could potentially make? I love to sit down and talk with Cody and just kind of pick his brain on, is this just out of the love, or is this actually, in your opinion, a good business deal?
Right, absolutely. And that is a great question. I'm curious to know the answer to that. Let me ask you, when it comes to Texas Tech, they have the number one portal class, spent top 5 most money on their portal class. Them in the Big 12 headed into next year, who knows? I mean, obviously, I think BYU is going to be pretty loaded along with Arizona State. How do you think Texas Tech fares then going into next season, spending all this money, bringing in all these different players?
I think you got to get the quarterback right. Jimbo tried this at A&M, and he couldn't get quarterback fixed. A lot of it was injury, but he had a rotational, door at quarterback. And it didn't really work out. Even Miami last year spent a lot of money.
Right.
They were better. They didn't win it. Ohio State spent the most money. They didn't go for a high-profile quarterback, but they got the quarterback selection right with Walker Howard, who ended up being perfect for that team this past year. So I'm not sure who Texas Tech transfer quarterback is off the top of my head, but that'll play a big role in it.
They have Baron Morton, who played against Colorado last year. I believe he's staying there, so they retained their quarterback from last year. I
remember him. He had some big games, but he actually turned the ball over a little bit a couple of times. I've seen him too. So to me, that's what will determine their ceiling.
Absolutely, yeah. And we'll discuss Texas Tech and more this offseason, but they're making noise and spend a lot of money, bringing in a lot of different people, and keep retaining their general manager in the process. So interesting developments. Let's stick on Texas football, Texas college football, and discuss big news here. Steve Sarkisian has confirmed that Texas will not hold a spring game this year, Shaun. And before I get your take on it, I want to show his breakdown as to kind of explaining why Texas will not have a spring game. Take a listen.
Not having a spring game? no, we're not going to have a spring game.
Wow, breaking news. You're the best coach, Sark. And we're just.
Well, I think a couple reasons why. Over the last 2 years, we've played 30 games.
Yeah,
and that's a lot for college football. Yes. 14 2 years ago, 16 this year. And I just mentioned we've had 25 guys get invited to the NFL Combine the last 2 years. So we've got a lot of young players on our roster. We have 21 mid-year high school kids that just showed up. And so the development that's needed for these guys to get ready for the fall is a little bit different than it used to be. And so our approach is going to be a little bit more NFL-driven, kind of more of an OTA style early on. And as we grow into more of the scrimmage formats in the second half of spring ball, that I just don't know rolling the ball out, playing the game when we only get 15 practices is the best for us to maximize the opportunities that we get. So it's going to be a little bit of a different approach, but I think college football is changing right now, and we need to do a great job as coaches of adapting to college football.
Shaun, there's Sark's explanation for it, but I got to ask you as a former college coach yourself, what's the real reason that Sark canceled Texas spring game? You saw Matt Rule and Nebraska seemingly do the same thing. What are your thoughts?
Shout out to my girl, Kay Adams, looking gorgeous as always. My little sister. I think you're going to see a lot more teams canceling the spring game. The roster turnover is so significant. First of all, you really probably don't have enough good, healthy bodies to have a competitive spring game. You think spring game is breaking up offense and defense on two separate teams. So, you got to really be returning a lot of guys or feel really good about your returning depth on campus for it to be like a competitive game. And also, why not just turn it into like a big recruiting day without the game? You know, where your players are available, you throw a big cookout, everybody's family can still come down, tour the facility. We just do everything, but we just don't play the game. I mean, I can see it. I can see it moving more and more in that direction. It doesn't surprise me. It doesn't shock me. And I think you'll see a lot of other teams kind of follow suit. Because spring games don't mean anything anymore. Like if you're going to go out there and do like a half-speed 7-on-7, and then like the really good players are going to play like, one series, like, I mean, why even have it?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point, Shaun. And I got to ask you, coming from Matt Rule's take on this or reasoning, do you think that tampering is a reason why Sark might have canceled this game, getting his players posted off from that's what Matt Rule's thoughts were.
Pull that top 5 NIL expenditures list up again. They ain't worried about that.
Okay. That's a great point.
Fourth on that list for a reason and well compensated. Steve is like just saying with all the wear and tear on our guys, and that's another thing. Another reason I think they got to look at the scheduling for the college football playoff. Like when you think if you're Notre Dame and Ohio State, shit, what they played mid to late January? Was it late January?
Yeah, it was late January.
I mean, you're gonna turn around and have a spring game in April.
Yeah, it was a very quick turnaround. But college football playoff is late,
Right. So I mean, the teams that feel like they're gonna be in it, he'd rather get the repetition out of sight. So that his guys, can get comfortable with the schemes and the systems and, without having to do it in front of a large audience before they're ready. So I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. It makes sense with the way college football is evolving, with the portal, with the teams that play in the college football playoff. I'm telling you, I would not be surprised if you start seeing a lot of other teams cancel their spring game. For a team like Nebraska that's been done with football for 4 months now, Matt Rule has no excuse.
Yeah, that's a great point, Shaun. great point there. Well, Shaun, sticky on this. So Texas not having their orange-white spring game, but I got to ask you about Texas headed into next season. Their first season, I think they fared pretty damn well in the SEC for their first year in the conference. Now headed into next season with Arch Manning at the helm. What are you optimistic about Texas? Are you're at top of the top going into teams next season? What are your thoughts?
I feel like Sarkisian's loyalty to Quinn Ewers cost them a championship.
I agree with you. That's a great point.
I think if he would have made the difficult decision to go to Arch Manning, what Art's skill set says he brings to the table would have made Texas a very formidable opponent.
Right.
Because he added the QB run aspect to the offense.
Mm-hmm.
The reason I hesitate to have an expectation, they lost a lot now. Those two wide receivers are really freaking good. Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
As I'm doing my NFL draft evaluations, I'm just telling you, remember those two names, Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden. Those guys are really freaking good.
They lost their tackle as well.
Banks, the tackle, he's gone. They lost this, I think, 2 or 3 guys in that secondary, which I consider best in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, when you look at the money they're spending and the level they're recruiting at, you would presume that they have guys adequate, replacements. But again, next year's next year. This year was this year. You got to stay healthy. You got to get fortunate. Some call it lucky in a couple tight games. And see if you can get back. So I'm excited to see Arch Manning play. I have not made an evaluation of Arch Manning. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to make him a prohibitive number 1 draft pick because his last name is Manning. I think that's unfair to the kid. Let's let him go out there and we'll see.
Absolutely. That's a great take. And can't wait to hear your breakdown of Arch as we get later in the offseason, close of the season. But, Texas is one of the –
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
To all you young quarterbacks, Arch Manning is going into year 3 at Texas, and for the first time will be the full-time starter at this university. He redshirted his first year out of high school. He backed up Quinn Ewers last year, started a couple games when Quinn got hurt. He didn't complain. He didn't jump in the portal. He didn't leave. Sure. Now that he gets his opportunity to start, he's been in Sarkisian's system going on his 3rd year. Just something to think about, young guys.
That is a great point there, Shaun. To all the young quarterbacks out there, that's game right there, Shaun. Great point. Something to think about. Well, Shaun, let's move forward. Let's get into some NFL talk before we go back to some college here. But the NFL has informed teams that they will be increasing the salary cap by over $20 million, $22.1 million to $26.1 million to be exact. Shaun, I got to ask you, how will this impact free agency? This now leaves the New England Patriots at the top of the list by over $25 million, having $126 million in cap space, followed by the Raiders, Commanders, and Cardinals. Shaun, what is the impact of the NFL increasing the free agency cap, and how will this impact free agency? Go ahead.
A hell of a time to be a free agent.
Right, absolutely.
They got more money to spend. Well, it's pretty black and white, hell of a time to be a free agent. I mean, you're going to see guys that probably would have got a deal for $4 or $5 million a year, get a deal for $8 million a year. That's just, what happens when they increase the cap. I mean, Patriots got a bunch of money, man. The Raiders, I didn't realize the Raiders had that much in cap space. I know they got a couple of their own guys to re-sign, but, do they have enough to convince an Aaron Rodgers to come to Vegas, So it's going to be a fascinating free agent period. When does free agency start? Do you know off the top of your head?
I believe the 12th, I want to say.
12th, March 12th.
4th or 12th. It's soon. I got to ask you, out of all these teams having the most cap space, who are you most excited about, and who do you expect to make a big splash in free agency? I think New England for sure. Pete Carroll and the Raiders. Chicago, I'm sure, will with Ben Johnson. And anybody you think will make a big splash in free agency?
I think the team that will make the biggest splash is the Washington Commanders.
Why do you say that?
Because they're the closest.
Oh, yeah.
And when you find out that you have a, once in a generation kind of talent in Jaden Daniels, and you saw that he's ready, you got to do everything in your power to make this process easy as possible for him by putting great players around him. So I fully expect the Commanders are going to be, I'd be in the T. Higgins market. Like, I don't have the list in front of me, but I'd be trying to trade for Myles Garrett. Like, I'd be trying to make the moves that are in Vegas going to make us one of the top 3-4 betting favorites next year.
Yeah, that's right. Commanders coming off a hell of a year. Jaden Daniels is a rookie quarterback. They get Kingsbury back next year as well, and look for them to make a huge splash. Now, let me ask you, talk about some more teams on this list. Pete Carroll and the Raiders. Now they have a ton of holes I think they have to address offensively, defensively. They have a couple pieces, but definitely need to bring in some people. Who do you expect the Raiders to go after in free agency to address quarterback need? I would guess they would bring a back of some sort or drafted running back. What do you expect to see from the Raiders in free agency headed into the draft?
Shout out to my guy John Spytek for getting the GM job here in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
If he asks my opinion, I would bring in Jameis Winston to play quarterback. I think he's the most talented free agent quarterback. He's still relatively a young person, so if you can resurrect his career, and I don't think it needs to be resurrected. I think if you can give him a fair shot as a starting quarterback, then I think he's going to prove, and they're not going to prove to me, but prove to everybody else that I know what the hell I'm talking about.
Right. You're big on Jameis, Shaun.
I am. He's the most talented one. If there's a way that we could get Devontae Adams back, or if we want to splurge on T. Higgins, now we line up with Jacoby Myers, Brock Bowers, and one of or Devontae Adams or T. Higgins. Now we're on a level where we got enough talent in the passing game to be dangerous. I wouldn't touch the running back market because I think this is a really, really great running back class in the draft. Maybe if I can get an Aaron Jones, on a team-friendly deal, I do it just so I can have two backs, but I definitely would be drafting at one of these backs if I was Vegas.
Yeah, that's a great point. And
is it worth? And I'm just telling you, if I could do that come June 1st, hey, Cleveland, y'all can have next year's number one for Miles. And now I line up with Miles, Max Crosby, and Christian Wilkins, and I added Jameis and a receiver to the offense, drafted a running back to go with one of these veteran running backs. Now all of a sudden, the rainbow doesn't seem as long. The pot of gold seems a lot closer, especially when you have this amount of cap space.
Yeah, that's very true. And Shaun, that is a great little theory there with Jameis Winston. Let me ask you, and we talked about this on JB's show a few days ago, but you're super high on Jameis Winston, and I highlighted this to a couple people. Teams seem to have not given him a real opportunity, have they? In terms of the last 4 or 5 years, I would think, what was the last time? The Saints, and then he ended up getting hurt. He had the back injury, I believe, correct?
Yeah, I think he tore his ACL against Tampa.
Oh, yeah. But
I think the Saints had started out undefeated. He was having a really great start to the year. And, it's just been hard for him to get like a legitimate starting opportunity. All the rest of them have come because Deshaun Watson tears his Achilles or, circumstances outside of his control. So,
right.
Again, and I'm just saying based on resume, age, ability, I think Jameis is the highest caliber available quarterback in this current free agent crop. And I'm going to include Sam Darnold as one of those. I just think Jameis is more talented than Darnold. They have about the same arm talent. Jameis is slightly taller. I think Darnold might be a little more thicker, but Jameis, they're both the same kind of athlete. Neither one's going to run for 600 yards, but they can pick up first downs with their legs when they need to. I just think Jameis has the better clutch gene than Sam. Like Sam fell apart mentally on the big stage. And I don't know if you can fix that. Jameis is too damn confident. I can reel that back a little bit.
Right. Yeah. And that's a great perspective coming from you as a coach. People aren't going to discuss that. Man, yeah, that's a great perspective. I just had to get your take on Jameis Winston. Going back to free agency, I got to ask you, last team I'm going to ask you about, New England. New England has a league high, $126 million in cap space. Before we talk about them in the draft, they hold the number 4 overall pick. But what do you expect to see from New England in free agency this offseason with Vrabel as head coach?
I can see him being pretty active. I think Drake May did enough good things, in the small sample size we saw to make some offensive talent want to go to New England. Vrabel has a pretty good reputation around the league with the players, so that's going to help. And they got the money. We'll see. I mean, I don't know that this is the greatest free agent class we've ever seen, especially if Cincinnati transition tags, T. Higgins, or some of the guys that we think could be available aren't available. We just don't quite know that yet. But yeah, I think they're going to be active.
Absolutely, and I agree with you. And if you had to take a guess, would they take it for? Are you taking any? Would you say Travis Hunter? Would you say somebody defensively?
If Travis Hunter is there at 4, everybody should be fired in the National Football League. Travis Hunter,
great point,
and Abdul Carter are by far the generational talents in this draft class. Now, I will say this: the defensive edge position is loaded.
Facts. No,
I mean, you're going to be able to get, some guys. I just did the film yesterday. I didn't bring my notebook with me. But, man, I've got first-round grades on about 8 edge guys. So, I mean,
there's a lot of competition.
I do think Abdul Carter's the best, but if I get the kid Donovan, I'm not going to even try and pronounce his last name, from Boston College. He's just a dynamic over edge rusher. And I even got to the 2 Georgia kids, Nick Scorton from A&M, James Pierce from Tennessee. Man, this is a deep edge class. So, but Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are the best players. So if Travis Hunter's there at 4 in New England, you know how teams like to take the whole allotted time to make their decision? Like as soon as they say New England's on the clock, the commissioner will just read and they draft Travis Hunter.
Yeah, I agree with you. I expect Travis to go 1, but if Travis is there at 4, I can see it. Vrabel had the opportunity to play both ways. I can see it. Definitely a good fit with Christian Gonzalez in New England.
So here's what's going to be interesting on who goes number 1. I know for a fact Travis Hunter is going to go to the combine and jump 40-plus inches and run sub 4.4. He's going his short shuttle, his broad jump, all of that is going to be right on the cusp of best ever. Abdul Carter looks like he's going to go do the same thing. I'm just not as in the know about his athleticism, but he looks when you watch him on film, he looks like he's going to go run low 4.5, high 4.4. So I mean, to me, that's going to go a long way in who goes number 1.
That's a great point. And Tennessee holds the number 1 overall pick unless they trade out of it. Their defensive line is loaded. Pretty damn good. You got Tavondre Sweat, Jeffrey Simmons, among other guys. Harold Landry, I believe, is still there as well. The one thing they don't have, they drafted what's his name, Caleb Farley in the first round, I believe, at corner, and ended up cutting him. That's the one reason in my head, the back of my head, I'm like, Travis could fill that void of them drafting Caleb Farley 2 years ago. Danny, agree or disagree?
I don't think that's 2 eggs in the same basket, but I do get your point. They have a need at cornerback, and Travis Hunter's an elite cornerback. All of this said, I don't think, Callahan is the head coach there?
Ryan Callahan, yeah.
I don't think he's going to sleep well at night if Will Levis is his starting quarterback. I think he's over Will Levis. He wants to file the divorce papers as soon as possible. So unless they go quarterback in free agency, they may be in a position where, Cam Ward is by far the most talented quarterback in this draft class. If there's one guy that has a high ceiling, it's him. Now, whether he can reach it or not, we got to figure that part out.
Right.
But he's got the goods.
Yeah, and then, I think him or Shedeur could go in there. It like you said, man, it depends on fit, man. It depends on
Shedeur and Cam are not in the same stratosphere talent-wise.
Really?
Really.
So, man.
And it's not a knock on Shedeur. Drew Brees is not as talented as Jake Locker. But Drew Brees is top 3 all-time passing yardage.
Right. Great point, Shaun.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm not saying that Shedeur can't go and be great, but just pure talent-wise, it's not close.
Yeah, I haven't heard that name in a long time. Jake Locker was great at Washington, not so great in Tennessee. So, that's a hell of a point, Shaun. I gotta ask you one more thing on college before we get out of here. This is a different question from what we've been talking about. So DeSean Jackson was obviously hired as the head coach of Delaware State HBCU, and I wanted to ask you, he made a new hire as his running back coach, former NFL star Clinton Portis. Now, Shaun, do you have any thoughts on DeSean taking the Delaware State job? Do you think it's to jump to another job, or do you think he'll actually develop that program? Delaware State has won 2 games in the last 2 seasons, so definitely a rebuild program there at the HBCU level. But what are your thoughts on DeSean Jackson coaching at Delaware State and then hiring Clinton Portis as his running back coach?
I think a lot of this is the Deion effect. For whatever reason, college football has shied away from hiring former NFL players into some of these positions. But because Deion had a lot of success at Jackson State, now you see Michael Vick at Norfolk, DeSean Jackson's at Delaware State, or somebody else that just got a HBCU head coaching job too. Terrell Buckley is at Mississippi Valley State, I think. So you're starting to see, these colleges start to realize that maybe the NBA knows what they're doing. If you look on the NBA sidelines, it's littered with head and assistant coaches that played in the National Basketball Association.
That's true.
And I'm happy for DeSean. I'm happy for Clinton. I wish them all the best, but I think some of this stuff is long overdue.
And why do you say that?
Because for so long, former NFL players have kind of been ostracized from these positions. Not given the opportunity at the college level, not given the opportunities to be head coaches, to be coordinators on these different staffs. So I'm glad that some of my peers and colleagues are getting these opportunities. I think it's long overdue. And I think a hat tip has to go to DeSean Sanders.
Absolutely, hat tip does go
because Bailey, a former NFL player, is never going to be qualified to be a college head coach. Great because point. He left college, he did not go into coaching. He went into playing professional football.
Yeah.
So if you're just going by his coaching resume, I mean, what are you going to play 8, 9, 10 years in the NFL and then have to go be a GA for 2 years somewhere, an assistant position coach? Like, come on, man.
And
give these guys some shots and we'll see what they do with it.
And that's, not to bring up JB, but we've talked about that with him. And his biggest pushback is that Deion didn't go up in the ranks. Yeah, he did coach, but now you're seeing Michael Vick, DeSean Jackson jump into coaching, and they've never coached before. And that's his pushback. Do you feel the same pushback?
Not at all. And again, I respect and understand what JB is saying. There are some guys that have been career coaches who have the coaching resume to get the Delaware State head coaching job or the Norfolk State head coaching job. My point being, the NBA has never held that against their former players.
True, yeah.
College football has held that against former NFL players. And if you play 8+ years in the NFL, how are you going to get a good college coaching resume?
That's a great point, Shaun. Yeah, so exactly.
If you don't take the leap of faith and say I like what Vic stands for now. I like the fact that he overcame adversity. He's from that area. We think he can be a great ambassador for the program, and he can help, develop and turn young boys into men. Give him the shot.
Absolutely. And you share a similar sentiment with Coach Leroy Frederick, Coach Fred, who we have on JB's show. He came on this show and said the same damn thing you did. So yeah, absolutely. And we'll get a chance to see DeSean Jackson and Michael Vick actually face off this season, November 1st at Delaware State University, Norfolk versus Delaware State. We'll get a chance to see 2 former teammates face off. Shaun, you looking forward to this?
I'm happy for these guys. I'm not going to say I got this circled on my calendar. It's in November, man.
Right.
I don't know what the hell I mean. Norfolk State could be 0-10 by then. They could be 10-0. Let me see how they do. They didn't get these jobs because these programs are winning conference championships and having, 8+ win seasons. So just for the public, these are 2 reclamation projects. These are 2 complete rebuilds at Norfolk and Delaware State. So it may take them a year or 2 to get the thing going the direction they want it in. So I'm going to show grace and patience to both young men. And, if they're able to do it in year 1 because of the portal and it's a good versus good matchup, then hey, I'll be tuned in.
Absolutely. And yeah, like you mentioned, definitely rebuild projects. Norfolk went 4-8 last year, and that's for Vic. And Delaware State's won 2 games in the last 2 seasons. So
right. So I mean, It ain't like they inherited Jackson State when Deion left. Like
right.
These some rebuilds.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to see it. We'll discuss HBCU more in the offseason, but we're seeing more former NFL players taking HBCU jobs in college coaching. But Shaun, man, I appreciate you. This is a great show on this fine Thursday. I can't thank you enough for joining, man. We talked about a lot of different stuff, and I can't wait to see you back on JB's show next week. We'll be full go. Get to respond to JB. We've been off for a week, and Smitty, who's really been off for a week. So, man, I can't thank you enough for joining, man. I appreciate you.
Bailey Price Media. I'm out.
All right. See you soon, Shaun. Man, can't thank Super Bowl champion, Tulane legend, Shaun King enough for joining, man. That was a great show here on this fine Thursday on Bailey Price Media Live. If you're watching, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, and become a member of the Bailey Price Media Army here at Bailey Price Media. That super chat button is open. If you'd like to donate, hit that super chat button, send a donation. We'll be back right here 3 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday with a new special guest for Bailey Price Media Live. And JB and I will be live on Monday on Slot Nation, our new LA show covering LA football, Chargers, Rams, Raiders, USC, and UCLA. And Matt and I will be live tomorrow on 0 to 60, talk Colorado Buffaloes and anything else Big Matt wants to talk about. So that's going to be a great time. But make sure you hit that like button, subscribe. And I appreciate you guys all watching. This is a great show here on this fine Thursday. And we'll see you guys next week. Peace.